All right, so what is up, guys? Welcome back to Late Night Shots, episode 38. Today we have two special guests with us. You got Brandon Lucero and Ben Bancroft. So what's up, guys?
What's up? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, getting through it, getting through the whole COVID stuff. So
Yeah.
you know how it is. But yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm Brandon Lucero. As you guys know, you just introduced me. I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado. I run my own wrestling club, Colorado Springs Freestyle and Greco. I just became the head coach of Air Academy High School. I'm the youngest head coach in the state. Ben Bancroft here, who's joining us here on the Zoom meeting, is a former student of mine, now friend. He wrestles for the Navy under Kerry Colott. So it's a big accomplishment. I wrestled in Northern Colorado. I didn't wrestle very, very long. It was a short stint. I learned a lot. I learned that Division I wrestling is more like a business rather than, I'm just here to wrestle. It's not just like play around time, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the huge jump from high school to college. But what makes me a great coach is I want to take my experience and kind of learn from it and then help my wrestlers out and to get them to that level so they know what to expect when they are at that level. So that's kind of my first student here, Ben. That's kind of where I got him, and he's in his freshman year, and he's killing it. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's on the right path, and I think he's going to be one of the top prospects in college wrestling coming here soon. So remember his name.
Yeah. I think one thing you didn't answer. You said you're the youngest coach in Colorado right now.
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
how old exactly are you?
I'm 21.
Okay. So you just graduated college?
I'm still in college, actually. Yeah.
So you're a
Yeah.
senior, I'm assuming?
I'm a junior right now.
Okay.
I have a few more credits and then I'll be done. But yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
definitely.
I think one of the biggest questions people are going to have is like, you obviously see a lot of Division I caliber wrestlers, like as athletes, them go into the D2, D3, JUCO, and NAIA ranks. What do you think is like the deciding factor whether guys can compete at that Division I level, or they have to take a step down from there?
I can jump on that. I was committed to go to the Merchant Marine Academy, which is similar to the Naval Academy, but it's D3. It's from my experience, the skill level. I can wrestle here. I got recruited, go D3. I got calls from University of Northern Colorado, but it's honestly knowing that you want it. I still stay in contact with the guys from Merchant Marine, and they want it, but they don't want it as bad. They practice once a day. They do yoga on Sundays. Here I'm going from class, literally running from class to my room so I can change, so I can work out during lunch, finish my lunch, workout, go straight back to class, and then have a 2-hour practice in the afternoon. The difference between me and Jake Glansman, who's at Merchant Marine, is just the desire to want it, the desire to compete at the D1 level and to be the best in the world.
Yeah. Do you think there's like a real difference between, you see a lot of these Division I guys, a lot of these guys, these top level Division I guys have the aspiration to go pro, what I'm saying, like wrestle at the senior level at the Olympics is obviously the dream for these guys. But then you see a bunch of talented wrestlers coming out of high school, even state champs, national ranked guys, but they're more really doing it because they like the sport, not because they have any true aspirations to follow along with it as a career.
I think, unfortunately, with wrestling, there's not a lot of career opportunity, and I think that a lot of wrestlers know that. But I think everybody here, at least, at the end of the day, they want to be the best in the world. When I talk to the guys on the team, it's not about, okay, I'm just here just because like it's the only thing that got me into the Naval Academy. That was kind of my preconceived notion coming in, is that like a lot of people would be on the team just because it was the only way they could get into the Naval Academy. They didn't have the grades, they didn't have the leadership. But for they're all saying, I'm under head coach Kerry Colott.
Mm-hmm.
I have the cream of the crop coach. I have the opportunity to be the best in the world, and I'm going to take advantage of that.
Yeah. I think one of this question is actually for you, Brandon. So
Okay.
I think I was talking to this one guy. He just hit me up through DMs. Obviously you're not gonna find a lot of money in wrestling as you will as like guys picking football. Mostly in the heavyweight, obviously you have like these D1 linemen who also have offers to wrestle D1, but they're obviously gonna pick football because that's the money route for a lot of guys, unless they truly love wrestling to that extent. But this guy was telling me that we could, like, similar to like the NFL, MLB, NBA, we could have like a wrestling league. So I think I just kind of made up something in my head. So you'd have 32 teams, just like the NFL. Each one would have one coach, one head coach, an assistant coach, and how many ever other coaches, right? And then they would have just a base team of wrestlers that they would pick the first year. Then every year coming out of college, you could draft wrestlers.
Yeah, no, I like the idea, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Bryce Meredith.
Yeah.
Uh, he's really big in trying to grow the sport recently, and he made a message on Instagram actually that was, "Hey, we need to start making money,"
Yeah.
which is wrestling is not a sport that makes money, and I would say it is probably the hardest sport out there where it comes to mentality, your physical aspect when it comes to the sport. A lot of people don't put that into consideration, but I do agree with them. I do agree that wrestlers should get paid past that college level. College, I still think that amateur, they're still kind of learning, and then they need to jump to freestyle and Greco, and then that should be, like you said, like a league style, like something needs to be made in order to, pay off the wrestlers that put in their entire lives. I can't tell you how many injuries I have and have made a few $1,000s for them, if that.
I think the biggest problem here is, as you know, with the 195-pound flow bracket, I think the champ was Miles Martin. Second place was Taylor Lujan. Third, I'm assuming, was Nate Jackson. Four was Keith Gavin, I think, there. So if you look at that, it's 40,000 in payouts, but you also have to consider the cost of getting the guys out there, doing all this. And theoretically, the only two that really went home with a decent amount of money would be Miles Martin and Taylor Lujan there.
Yeah, so here's my idea here. So to kind of grow the sport money-wise, actually one thing I'm doing, so my whole thing wanting to come on the podcast was to kind of talk about my next steps as a coach.
Okay.
So I coach high school, I coach club. There's a lot of coaches that do that. But me, I'm creating one central facility here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, because a big problem we've had is not having enough mat space. Yes, we do have the Olympic Training Center, but it is not available to anybody but those top athletes. So when we're talking about bringing money into the sport and bringing it into that top level of the game, I think we need to inflate the youth and then the high school first, if that makes sense. What I mean by that, so I'm going to start holding tournaments as soon as this whole COVID thing is done, and it's going to be 10 grand to the winner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can't give 10 grand to a kid, but you can give 10 grand as a donation to their club.
Yeah.
So then if we can grow the sport in the youth side of things in high school and gain some interest there, I think it's a lot easier to do at the senior level.
I think this literally just came off the top of my head. Ben, this might be good for you to answer too. So what if flow wrestling and like Rockfin, track wrestling, when they would hold these tournaments, give payouts to the winners, say if they could let college kids compete, but if they did win, instead of giving them a donation to whatever club or anything, they could put it towards scholarship money.
I think I'm in a particularly odd situation for that. Every student at the Naval Academy goes to school for free. It's paid by the Navy. So I think having the opportunity to get scholarship for student athletes is huge, especially in the wrestling community.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you guys know how like Title IX and NCAA does their thing, but basically the school only has so much money from the NCAA, from the government, and to give that to wrestling is hard for a lot of schools because wrestling doesn't create revenue. It doesn't make them money. Obviously there's Penn State, there's Iowa, there's Minnesota, but for a lot of schools, Campbell, Lehigh's probably breaking even, but it costs money to run a wrestling program. So I think at the end of the day, it would be huge for the wrestlers, absolutely, to be getting money to go to school. But I think really where this has to start is creating revenue for the sport. The sport has to create its own revenue. We have to get fans. We have to have people watching the sport. I think that Beat the Streets does a great job of that. They're huge on promotion. They're huge on getting people out there watching wrestling, understanding wrestling. And I think that's where we have to start.
Yeah. I think, again, the biggest holdback here is really like you go through Flow Wrestling. Like I obviously paid for the Flow subscription, Rockfin subscription, just so I can put out content on like all my social media sources. But you see a lot of people like they're just not going to pay for it either because they don't have the money or they think it's really a waste. Like in my opinion, I think it's worth it. But then I think a problem here is like people would stream this just on Twitch. which you think like it only hurts Flow, but kind of hurts the athletes too. That kind of lets them not bring in more athletes that people want to see. So in terms to get the free wrestling, you're kind of hurting it too.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And Bryce Meredith touched on that. I know Brandon was talking about that a little bit, but he was saying you guys have to pay for these subscriptions. I know you guys are saying we want to watch free wrestling. You know, the NFL is free. We want to watch it. But at the end of the day, we need to make money to pay these wrestlers to come out to compete.
Yeah. What do you think is this one's for either one of you. What do you think is the first real step they could take, like after, obviously Flow, Rockfin, track wrestling, all the other sources that are out there? What's one major step that we could take to get more money into the sport and try to grow it?
I think allowing either than the small group of seniors that we all know very well, allowing kind of outside, like up and coming wrestlers to join in on that as well. So like some of the events that have been going on lately, we've seen the high level college athletes that we want to see wrestle. But I mean, you got Ben at Navy. He's Division I wrestler as well. And has he gotten a call from Flo saying, hey, come wrestle for us for this thing? Now that increases participation in the sport, and participation increases fans, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think just the respect at all levels in the sport kind of needs to change a little bit.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I see a lot is there's a lot of misunderstanding about wrestling. We're all wrestlers. We know a lot of people don't understand wrestling. You know, when they look at it, they don't understand what's going on. Every girl I've dated, when they ask me, what they're confused by the scoring system and by that. And for that, it's a turnoff to the sport. People don't want to watch it because they don't understand what's going on. And so I think a great way to grow the sport would be to posit understanding, putting out there, hey, like this is the scoring system, once people understand something, they're more willing to watch it. And I think that would be the biggest step for wrestling.
Yeah. A couple of things that I see that, again, Flow obviously being the biggest source of wrestling. A lot of things I've been seeing them do are like, instead of going after the best guys, I've seen them been going after the guys with the highest social media followings, which is kind of an interesting marketing tactic, right?
It
Because,
is.
obviously Gable Steveson, Robin Bravo Young, Spencer Lee, those guys are like at a premium from the get. Because if you just, like Flow, basically, I'm assuming they would just send them or email them a picture just for them to post on social media, like on their Instagram, Twitter, whatever the story. If 100,000 people are following you, right, Gable Steveson, and then take like Nick Gwizdowski with like 15,000 followers and he posts it. Gwizdowski, last time they wrestled, Gwizdowski was the better wrestler, but Gable Steveson is going to have a lot more output and people wanting to watch it.
Yeah, definitely. There's the social media aspect is weird. It is odd, and I think it's good for the sport. I really do, because that's, social media is part of the world now, as we've learned this entire summer that everything is influenced by media. So I think using that to their advantage is good. But like I said, it brings it back. They need to kind of include the whole group there, if that makes sense, where we need to make other wrestlers famous. Because what happens when Gable's done wrestling? What happens when Roman Bravo's done wrestling? There's this underclass that kind of needs to grow, and they haven't really had that chance to.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a bit of like, high school guys on the come up. It's just like, there's social media. I think TikTok is a big thing that's like promoted a lot. That you see guys like Chase Odate from California, it's going to Michigan State. Somehow has like 400,000 followers on TikTok, just making random content. He's verified on Instagram now. I think he's only a one-time state champ. I don't think he's a national champ or anything like that. But then you see guys developing these presence through like other sources. Like in terms, like they're not really making wrestling content on those sources, but they're getting known because they're a wrestler. So what's your like opinion on that?
TikTok, I don't know. I'm not with TikTok as much as because I would rather professional service, because if we're talking about making money for a sport, rather than an individual, I would look at TikTok as an individual revenue, even if they're not making money. Individual revenue by, hey, I'm getting increased attention through TikTok. But I think as a sport, approaching that like Flow, they need to make it more like, hey, this is the NFL. Like there needs to be that league name, if that makes sense. Like this is the UFC. And I don't know if you remember, if you watch UFC at all, but at the beginning of the UFC, they go out through the rule set, and here's how we score the fights. That's something we don't do in wrestling. We kind of just, boom, here's how freestyle is scored, and here's how we plan to score it here.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. So you're theoretically saying like at the beginning of like every wrestling thing, just
Just a
go through
quick
like
breakdown. Yeah, just a
okay.
quick breakdown.
Yeah, but I think the problem there is like takedowns can get like really controversial at times, and then
They can, but I mean, again, if I go back to UFC fights, how many fights are controversial? It's still scored the same. We still see the same scoring, but it's a little bit more understood because hey, octagon control. That's what they're how many strikes are landed, how many kicks are landed. It could be how many takedowns are landed, his attempts on takedowns, stuff like that.
yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I just think that that'd be kind of interesting at it, and I think that might be have some good positives and negatives as well, but
definitely.
it could be very interesting to implement that into it. So again, what was the event that just happened recently? The flow thing. What was the flow card? I think it was just a flow card.
Yeah, it was just a flow card. Can't remember what they call it, but it was the Burroughs Zahid one.
Yeah. What was your opinion on like overall what happened there?
I think Burroughs is an animal, and he's the king, man. I truly do. Because me and Ben actually we were down at the Olympic Training Center, and Burroughs and Zahid were in the same room. They were doing a live match, like they were getting prepared for the World Team Trials. They were getting ready to go, and I remember watching Zahid actually put it on JB pretty good, and so it surprised me because he was still a young college athlete, and here's Jordan Burroughs who's been in the game for quite a while. So it really impressed me that today's era can compete with kind of the older generation who's more tough and brute.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, so it was interesting, but I think he's the king for sure.
yeah. I'm gonna be honest though, like say if Zahid never had like the whole incident and everything happen, right? Like say if he was good, gets himself in shape, do you think that match should go the other way next time?
I mean, that match should go the other way every time.
Definitely. I'll let
It's
Ben answer that one a little bit more.
wrestling is one of those sports where there's so much that goes into it. There's what did I eat the night before? How did I prepare? Jordan Burroughs is huge on that. He's huge on how he cuts his weight. When he starts, what he eats, when he eats it, and what if that gets messed up? What if your flight's late and you have to cut weight on the plane, and then you've got to take care of this, take care of that. You can be the best in the world and have your worst match in front of 50,000 viewers. Absolutely. And frankly, that match started 4-0.
Yeah,
Jordan Burroughs is a champ. Jordan Burroughs is an underdog champ. He's a killer. He's the American dream, and he's good at coming back. But at concurrently, he's old. Like
yeah,
no one 10 years ago would have said Jordan Burroughs will still be in the game. When he won his first Olympic title, 2012, I I wouldn't have sat back and been like, oh yeah, Jordan, Jordan Burroughs will be still the premier wrestler in 2021, and that's not the case.
Yeah, if we go back to the 2016 Olympics in Rio, he didn't have the best performance. He truly did not, and I honestly thought at that moment, hey, he might be on a kind of a downgrade in his career. But after the Zahid wrestling match, I mean, it was absolutely just changed my mind completely, and I actually have him over David Taylor in the future.
Zahid over
That'll be
David
interesting.
Taylor.
No, I have Burroughs over David Taylor.
I mean, I don't know about that one, but I do want to get back to one thing. You touched on like what guys do like the night before, how they cut their weight. You said like there's a lot of external factors that went through it. If you guys did see, the Hawkeye wrestling card beat the streets, and beat the streets from the year before. You had guys like Bajrang Punya from Wrestle Yanni, and Yanni ultimately beat him 10-8. And then you had Vladimir Kinchegashvili of Georgia, I think. He beat Yanni 4-4 on criteria, and then Ironman beat him 4-1, right, at the Hawkeye wrestling card. Do you think a lot of these things kind of went like into play for them? Traveling across the world to get here.
Like Ben said, it's anybody's game on any day. And so that's what I tell him. Like we text back and forth on a daily basis. Like you're in the game, even if you're down here and you want to be up here. Like you're that close. It's a game of centimeters, not a game of miles, if that makes sense. It's very close margins. Once you get to a certain level of wrestling, that kind of makes the difference between greatness and then not being noticed at all.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. But like, do you see like a pattern there with like international guys, coming to the U.S. not performing their best when it comes to these tournaments?
I definitely think that they're more used to like the world style tournaments, the world style refs, and then they come here and they kind of Flo is very good at putting creating a little tension between the wrestlers and making things a little awkward for the international wrestlers. I mean, everything's in English. It's kind of hard for them to follow. I get the pressure, and like Ben goes back to with the weight cut stuff like that, the travel, and a lot of the guys competing here are already in the state that the competition is happening in. So that's a huge benefit. Home turf is a benefit for anybody. We're talking NBA, NFL, home turf. That's where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, it makes sense.
Definitely.
But again, you see that with like international environments, guys not showing up, and then when time comes the Olympics, do you think there's like a difference? Like a lot of guys, again, what's it called? Snyder has been a guy, he's been on the decline recently, not performing his best. But then you throw it back to 2016 Olympics in Rio, has the best showing of his life.
Yeah, I'll let Ben answer that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say that it's anybody's game on any day once you get to a certain level. And he had his day. I mean, I see it in Brandon's background right there. He's on one of the posters. He's there.
Yeah. That's after he beat Sajid Live, right, at the World Championships.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like he did everything right, and he beat the people that he needed to beat. And he was a 3-time NCAA champ, and once he went up to heavyweight, and he did what he needed to do. But at the end of the day, like this is an ever-changing sport. And I see it in, Flo posts him still. I follow him on Instagram. I still see him training hard. It's not due to a lack of effort. It's not due to a lack of training. But the sport is what it is. Then there's so much that goes into it, right? And, now he's got to worry about what weight class he's going to go. Or no, he doesn't have to worry about that. His weight class is Olympic.
Yeah, he's going 97.
Yeah, he's an Olympic weight class. That's my bad.
I think his biggest thing he has to worry about, is Jaden Cox, obviously, with him getting the bye to the finals right there, being a world medalist.
Yeah.
I think he kind of gets lucky on that part. Again, he doesn't have to wrestle Kyvan Gatz and Colin Moore right there. So
I don't know. I really liked the interview with Kyle Dake and Jordan Burroughs, where Kyle Dake said, "Well, if the mini tournament doesn't mean anything, then give up your spot, wrestle in the mini tournament, and then wrestle me in the finals." And Jordan Burroughs said, "I won the world tournament. Like, there's a difference. I earned that." Yeah. And you're absolutely right in saying that. Like, yeah, that is a huge advantage to come from that world champ spot and have a bye to the finals, because that's a whole day of wrestling the best wrestlers in the world.
Yeah.
Once you're in the top 20 or top 5 in the United States, you're top 20 in the world. And again, the documentary with Jordan Burroughs and Kyle Dake having that build up showed it really well. Kyle Dake had some fucking scraps coming up to wrestle Jordan Burroughs, the best wrestler in the world. Is it fair? I don't know. I don't know if it's fair. I'd appreciate the opportunity.
This is something again I've talked with a lot of like a couple Division I wrestlers, a lot of my friends about. Flow wrestling. UFC will do all those like trash talk things and everything before their things. Do you think if wrestling implemented that, it could build like a lot more hype for matches, things like that?
Yes, I do, in one sense. But do you know who Kamal Bey is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kamal Bey, he was about to wrestle. God, I can't remember who he was about to wrestle, but he called him a Honda, and Kamal said he's a Ferrari. Okay, well, Kamal got teched in that match after talking that.
When was it? Was this at the Final X?
It was, yeah. Oh, it was against Pat Smith. It was against Pat Smith.
I remember he teched him the first match and lost the next two.
Right,
correct.
Yeah, it was best 2 out of 3.
You're right. He did win the first match and then lost the next 2. But the point is, I think wrestling is just so like I said, game of inches, that it's really hard to talk that, hey, I'm the best in the world, even though we're starting to see it more. We're starting to see Jordan Burroughs get a little bit more active on Twitter, which is he was not active on Twitter the past 10, 15 years up until now. Now he's like on it every day. You got AJ Ferrari calling out Gable Stevenson, who's not even remotely the same weight. So
I mean, Ferrari's like a solid 230. Gable's like 255-ish.
Oh, he's thick with 3 C's. He is absolutely a giant dude. But yeah, I think Gable's just way too big, and I think the tension that's building up to it is great. And it's like you said, if we're promoting the sport, we're trying to earn more money for the sport. It's great. That's what we want to do. But it's a game of inches, and it's really hard to replicate what UFC is doing.
I'd like to
no.
hop on that. I mean,
Okay.
I think UFC and wrestling are very comparable in that, we both sports have to cut weight. We have to worry about traveling. We have to worry about one-on-one tournaments being the center of everybody's attention. But I think that the trash talk is something that Americans in particular really like. They like that tension. They like to see people that don't like each other fight.
Yeah.
And I think taking that from the UFC, seeing, UFC's huge on that. They have them stand next to each other, and Flo took that. They weigh in the night before, and then they stand next to each other, and they take a picture right there. They're creating this friction. They're creating this tension between the people. And I think a lot of wrestlers come up humble. They come up knowing, I'm not going to talk big game. I'm not going to do this, But I think once we find, the big talkers, once we find Bryce Meredith is good at it too, and so is Roman Bravo Young. They say, I'm gonna win. I'm better. You're not as good as me, and I will win. And I think that once we get people that are going back and forth, actually, Brandon brought up a great point. You guys brought up a great point. AJ Ferrari and Gable Steveson, they're going back and forth on social media. They're creating this hype, and then you've got people and they see this on their trending, oh man, like my two wrestler buddies are following this, and like, oh shit, he called him a Honda. What? Like once we see once we see this friction, that's when we start to see fan base growth. And I think that is something that basically for wrestling to grow in the United States and to create revenue, we have to have.
Yeah. Also, my Zoom thing just sent me a meeting that it's going to shut off in like 7 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm not sure what that's about. But if it does shut off, do you guys just want to hop back on from part 2?
Definitely, yeah, I'm fine with that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because it said I need to get Zoom Plus or something, but I never did that before. I was filming like 2-hour episodes. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, no. Subscriptions are going up all over the world. So
yeah. I've spent like $50 this month just trying to get stuff to put out more content. Hopefully it pays off.
Then yeah, crank it out. What do you throw your podcast on?
It's on I do it through Anchor, so I'll technically just post this video on YouTube, and then I put it through Anchor, which distributes it to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts.
Yeah, nice.
Like everything that exists, basically.
Cool. You got a good thing going here.
Yeah.
So why did you stop wrestling?
What do you mean? No, I'm still wrestling in college.
You're still wrestling. You're wrestling. Where are you wrestling at?
I'm wrestling at Shippensburg. Our season just got canceled. It's D2. Yep. Yeah.
So would this be your first year of college?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so are you kind of still trying to stay in shape for it, or what?
I mean, weight-wise, I messed up like really bad, but like I'm still in decent shape.
What's your plan for college?
Honestly, my goal, if I can get out at least like I think 200 episodes of this podcast by the time I graduate college, and it can produce a solid income because obviously the NCAA is changing the rules next year. You can make money off of your personal things like this. So
yeah.
And theoretically, since my season got canceled this year, I'm not really an athlete yet.
Sweet. Yeah. So just one thing I told Ben, since I started coaching, I gave up my wrestling career. I've almost come back and tried to wrestle D2 a couple times. But I think I'm a better coach than I am a wrestler. And it's hard to admit that sometimes. It really is, because I want to wrestle. I love being in the game. I love being in the grind. But I really like teaching my students the correct way of how to get to the top level. So one thing a coach told me one time is, every night you get done with wrestling practice, you get done with your conditioning. Everybody on your team did the same workout, right? Mm-hmm. So I told Ben that when you go back to your dorm, that you need to do an extra something. You need to separate yourself from the pack, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so I've just been having him do push-ups, sit-ups, stuff like that when he gets back. That's on top of the, Kerry Colot's absolutely crazy workouts that he does. I don't know if you've watched any documentary or seen.
Yeah, I watched a good amount of this stuff.
He's an insane dude. He's absolutely wild. I love his technique, and he's a really cool guy. Yeah. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think touching back on what you're saying, you said you're a better coach than wrestler. Most people obviously wouldn't understand that. They'd be like, "Oh, if you're that good, why don't you just keep wrestling?" But then I remember this Cael Sanderson documentary came out with Flo, kind of addressed the same thing, why he gave up wrestling after that, why he started coaching, all the moves to Penn State, and then you see the dynasty he formed there.
Yeah, no, it's like a click. I can't explain it. And, I'm young. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of haters that are going to be like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But there's like a click, like just everything. My wrestling IQ has gone through the roof compared to actually when I was wrestling. I've learned a lot more coaching from the athletes, even their basic skills. I've learned a lot more just technical stuff. And you really start to realize how, there are levels to the game. As Jordan Burroughs put it, there are levels to the game. Which is interesting once you kind of get there and find out what those are. Like there's still more improvement to go on. I kind of want to see what Ben has to say about what is it like wrestling for the Navy? What is it like wrestling for one of the greatest high school wrestlers of all time?
It is intense. Practices are intense. He is fully aware that we have a lot of things to do here at Navy. It's not a normal college. We've got to take, right now I'm taking 19 credit hours. And then on top of that, I've got to stand watch 3 or 4 times a week. I've got uniforms that I have to wear and workouts that I have to do in the morning that are separate from the wrestling team. And it's intense. He holds us to the standard that we will be the best in the world. And I think that is something that's really, really excellent, because at the end of the day, if you can be, I talk about this a lot, habitual excellence, right? If you can be good at school, then you can be good at wrestling, you can be good at your sleep management, you can be good at everything, right? Once you're excellent in one thing, it's a drug. You can be excellent in everything, and you pick that, and you grow in your whole life. And I think that Coach Colat expects that.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think, I've obviously been in D2 program. I think the only real difference between them is like the level that they really hold you to and like how strict they are with everything. You have these D3, D2 schools, obviously you got like parties and stuff going on all the time everywhere, like even during COVID. And like in D1 schools, like obviously some guys will participate in it, but like it's just like you see a difference there. Just my opinion, what I've noticed so far. Those are
Yeah,
things I really didn't realize in high school.
yeah, you do see that. Hey, there's a lot of parties and there's a lot of stuff, especially for those like big colleges like Penn State, Iowa. I know a lot of those guys, and I know that they like to party. Um, but really, my values is if you want to separate yourself from the pack, you really want to be the king, then you can have a little fun every now and then, but you know which track you're on. You know which you need to be every day. There's always that saying you need to improve 1% every single day. So that's the goal. I did 200 push-ups today. I'm going to do at least 201 push-ups tomorrow, if not more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So we are running out of time on part one, guys. I don't know why my Zoom's bugging like this, but I will meet you guys back for part two very soon.
perfect.